I want to start by saying thank you to all of you for giving me the opportunity to share my story today. This is not the type of thing that I would normally sign up to do, but I felt like I had some experiences to share with you that might prove beneficial to you down the road. I'm sure that a lot of you have started giving some serious thought to what career you would like to pursue. And I would like to share with you the path that I took in ending up as a private school math teacher. Spoiler alert, the path was not the straight line that I initially expected it to be. When I graduated high school, I was fairly certain that I was going to be a lawyer, like one of those cool ones who you see defending innocent people in movies. But after 2 years of liberal arts at Abbott, I was sick to death of essays and questions with no definite right answers. So I turned back to my true love that had been there all along: math. Sweet, beautiful math. I decided to pursue an honors math degree at Queen's. And when it became apparent that I was not exactly going to be creating any new theorems of my own, I decided to turn to teaching. I enjoyed teaching during my summer job as a lifeguard, and we've already established that I love math, so being a math teacher made a lot of sense. So boom, career choice done. After a year spent getting my teacher's diploma in Scotland, I arrived back in Montreal, ready to spread my love of math to the youth of today. I managed to land a couple of short-term substitution gigs, and then, about a month into the school year, I got my big break. A public school in the English Montreal School Board was looking for a full-time math teacher. My interview went really well, and a few days later, I reported to work to teach my very own grade 7 and 8 math classes. To say that the students were not exactly happy to see me would be an understatement. They had had various subs for the first month of the year, and they had pretty much been allowed to watch movies every day. I came in there smiling and excited to show them just how much fun math could be. In response, they smirked at me and told me that they had made teachers quit before and that they would do the same to me. Oh no, I told them. I'm in this for the long haul. I had seen enough teacher movies from the 80s and 90s to know that the tough students always come around in the end. Unfortunately, this was not Hollywood, and I was no Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds. It's a really good movie, and you should all check it out. But in all seriousness, I was in completely over my head, and I had no idea how to handle the situation. I had a lot of sympathy for these students, as this school was located in one of the less privileged areas of Montreal, and I knew that many of them were dealing with issues that I could not begin to understand. Why would you care about learning math when you're leaving the house every day without breakfast? But at the same time, it was hard not to take their animosity towards me personally. They were rude, and they were mean, and if I'm being honest, they were kind of scary. I tried to come down hard on them, but they laughed in my face. I remember arriving at work one day to find F. Miss Farnell carved into the wooden door frame of my classroom. Having generally been perceived in the past as a pretty nice person, it was hard for me to take this in stride. Can't you see that I just want to help you? I wanted to scream in their faces. All of this was taking a toll on me, and I spent a lot of time crying alone in my classroom. Then I would go home and cry some more. I felt like a failure, and all of a sudden, I was questioning whether I could really hack it as a teacher. Clearly, I was not cut out for this job. After just a couple of weeks, I had reached my breaking point. I met with the principal, who was a really nice man, and he told me that if I could just give it 5 years, then things would definitely start to get easier. I nodded and smiled, holding back tears, but the truth is that I never returned to that building again. I just couldn't do it. I remember meeting with someone from the English Montreal School Board soon after, and she informed me, not unkindly, that if I walked out on this job, then it was unlikely that I would ever be hired by the school board again. At that moment, I just didn't care. In spite of the hard work that I had put in to get where I was, I figured that I was done as a teacher. So here I was, 23 years old, unemployed with no prospects, and living at home with my parents. This was not exactly what I had planned. If math was my first love, then reading was my second. So I decided that in this time of need, I would find a job where I could be surrounded by books all day long. Luckily, Chapters was hiring, and I managed to get a job working there over the holidays. I was pretty excited to work the cash register, since it's basically a giant calculator, and in all honesty, things were not so bad. The staff was nice, and I didn't feel like any of the customers who came in wanted me dead. But I also wasn't feeling very challenged, and I could tell that a career in retail was probably not something that I wanted for the long haul. A little after Christmas, a friend of mine hooked me up with a job in promotions, distributing free samples and being an ambassador for various brands. Had you been around at the time, you might have come across me awkwardly handing out Nivea samples at your local mall. Seeing as how I am generally extremely uncomfortable talking to people, this job was also not a great fit. And then, in the spring of that year, after narrowly missing the cutoff to bite the bullet and apply to law school at McGill, I found out that a one-year math teacher position was opening up at Trafalgar for the following year. The position was only a 75% load, which meant that it probably wouldn't appeal to many of the more established teachers out there. With my confidence still pretty shaky, I decided to give teaching one more shot. What did I have to lose? I had another strong interview, and I ended up being offered the position. And from the moment that I walked into the building on the first day of school, I could tell that things would be different. It's not that the girls never tried to give me a hard time, but they appreciated my love of math, and they were, for the most part, there to learn. I felt accepted, and by the end of the year, loved. I remember walking into my classroom one day near the end of the year, and one of the girls had written on the board, "We love you, Miss Farnell, please don't leave us." This was more like it. I felt a little guilty that I hadn't stuck around to help the students at my previous school, as they certainly deserved teachers who really were there for the long haul. But I also felt like I had found my niche. I was in my element. Unfortunately, there was no room for me to stay on at Traf after that year. But I ended up interviewing at a little school called Selwyn House. I remember when I told my students that I would be working at Selwyn next year, they were a little concerned for me. I believe it was one of my grade 9 girls who said, and I quote, "Miss Farnell, they'll eat you alive." She was maybe not entirely wrong, but I adapted pretty quickly to life at an all-boys school, and I've been committed to spreading my love of math to the youth of today for the past 13 years. Even though the path that I took to becoming a math teacher was not as straightforward as I had hoped, I am so glad that I gave it a second chance after failing so spectacularly the first time around. In fact, maybe I needed to fail in that way to end up where I am today. And I guess that this is the lesson that I hope you'll take from my story today. Thank you very much for listening.